This is Planet Music.
Welcome to Planet Music from the makers of Planet Marzipan.
In a streaming world, we're proud to be a podcast that celebrates the art of the album.
Hello, welcome to Planet Music. I'm Meza. I'm here with my good friends.
Craig.
And
Mikey.
Gray. And we have two guests. As you can tell from the title of the episode, we are here to take a look at Frankie Goes to Hollywoods. Welcome to the Pleasuredome. And we have two people who, full disclosure, are massive fans of this record. So we welcome Darren Moore.
Hello, chaps. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Darren. Nice to speak to you. And Neil McCrystal.
Evening all.
Hi, Neil. Welcome.
Hello.
So we're here to talk about Frankie's debut, double album, Welcome to the Pleasuredome. There is a Wikipedia entry for it, which I'll read just the first paragraph of. Welcome to the Pleasuredome is the debut studio album by the English band Frankie Goes to Hollywood, first released on the 29th of October 1984 by ZTT Records. Originally issued as a vinyl double album, it was assured of a UK chart entry at number 1 due to reported advance sales of over 1 million copies. It actually sold around 250,000 copies in its first week. The album was also a top 10 seller internationally in countries such as Switzerland, Sweden, Australia, and New Zealand. Craig, how old were you on the 29th of October 1984?
I was the ripe old age of 12. and bizarrely, that week I think was a half-term week from school, and I do believe I was in Blackpool on holiday for the week that week. So
well, there you go. There we go.
Never mind.
I would ask what you were listening to, but it's probably, I don't know, what, In the Night Garden or something. I don't know, what was it?
I think In the Night Garden was a little bit early for that.
I don't know, mate. My references are a little bit out there, but yeah. So as we've already said, there's a lot of fans of the record on this podcast. Guys, Darren, where were you round about this time? You were sort of into Frankie at this point, were you?
So I was the ripe old age of 13.
Okay.
So yeah, just halfway through secondary school. Yeah, I guess I was into. I hadn't heard of Marillion at that point because that came a year later. So I was into things. I was into a lot of new wave stuff. So Duran Duran, Wham, Spandau, all that malarkey. A lot of New Order. So yeah, all that kind of that stuff at that time. So
okay. What about yourself, Neil?
So I was 10. Yeah, I was.
John's going to turn off and walk away in a minute.
I was 20, but
it's not often I get to sit in a room and be the youngest person anymore.
No, enjoy it.
So, I'm wallowing in it, man. So yeah, I was tail end of primary school, really. What was I? I was very much getting into electronic stuff. So Ultravox was huge for me.
Yeah.
Around about that sort of time, and yeah, all the usual kind of pop stuff, Duran Duran, and all that stuff. It's quite difficult because at the age of 10, I think you just enjoy music. It's you've probably not quite formed your taste yet. It's more retrospectively that you look back and you think, oh yeah, that really meant something to me. At the time, you probably didn't think, oh yeah, I'm going to be a Frankie Goes to Hollywood fan. But when you listen to it as an adult and you remember the impact it had on you then, I think it's kind of a retrospective thing.
Yeah, okay. Well, as we've established, I am the oldest on here, but Gray, where were you at this point?
So I was 14.
Oh, God. We're getting there. I was 14. I remember the summer with the singles and stuff because I had a slightly older cousin who was the person that introduced me. So by that time, I was into Iron Maiden, I was into Meatloaf, Queen and Marillion had already crossed my horizon, all that kind of stuff. Adam and the Ants was the closest I'd ever got to the kind of
pop buzz thing, like buying into, and that was my cousin that really got into that. And that summer was, so 84 was the Los Angeles Olympics, wasn't it?
Yes.
With Daley Thompson and all that kind of stuff. So I was down in Middlesbrough at my cousin's house. There was all the family together, and I remember going out and buying the 10-inch singles of Two Tribes and all this kind of stuff, and getting all the different versions, and people having relaxed t-shirts on. So it's the first time I remember having this. Although for me it wasn't the music I liked, I was swept up in all the just a furor about Frankie Goes to Hollywood and the songs. The videos were amazing. It was all that. We'll get to it, but yeah. So it wasn't my scene, but I was swept up along with all the craziness about it.
Yeah. Mikey, presumably yours is similar to Craig, isn't it?
Pretty much. I was 11 when the album came out. Yeah, I think it was very much what I was into at the time. I was really into the new wave stuff that was happening. Somebody's mentioned Ultravox, so I was massively into them. But my musical tastes were still, at that point, I was still listening to my mum's and dad's records, so I was listening to mod stuff, glam rock, Beatles, ABBA, and I had that old stuff mixing with new stuff. And I think 83 to 85 was probably the time when music took over my life. And like Grace said, I just got swept up with all the Frank stuff. And I vividly remember going to Woolworths and my mum saying, oh, you can buy a single, and Relax was out. And I remember looking at it and she was going, but you're not getting that. I have a very, very vague recollection of being up very late one night and seeing them on the tube.
Yeah.
Before they got signed, and thinking, I shouldn't be watching this. It was a bit risky for an 11-year-old to be watching. But I think that day was, I bought Eurythmics' Here Comes the Rain again, or something of that ilk. But I certainly wasn't allowed to buy a Frankie record, not for quite some time.
Well, as the oldest one on it, I was buying the 12 inches. I mean, I was into ABC and, the Trevor Horn stuff there, and as you aforementioned, Ultravox and all that sort of thing. I had discovered Marillion by that point, so I kind of had a pretty broad spectrum there. I never had the album at the time. I had a lot of the 12-inch singles. I remember paying a lot of money for the Hibakusha mix at the time, which was, ZTT and Paul Morley were really clever. They put out limited quantities of some of these singles just to sort of create media hype and furore. I'd never had a t-shirt and I never had the album until a lot later. But I had all the singles and all the cassette singles, because the cassette singles were a thing of, well, unlike anybody else's, weren't they, really?
Yeah. They were unique. They were very unique.
So I was kind of into them. And I stayed with them for the second album as well, but we'll come on to that later on as we get further into this record. It is, although it's a double album, it's only just over an hour long, isn't it? It's 64 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the way it's split as a double album is really clever. We'll get onto it, but I think it's about 60, 67, something like that. Because it fits on a CD, doesn't it? So you never think of it as a double.
64 minutes dead.
Right, yeah. Because it fits on a CD. You never think of it as a double now. But but it's partitioned beautifully across the four sides.
It gives it space to actually sound good as well on the vinyl, doesn't it?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm sure that's a big factor, because there's some really deep bass on this record.
Yeah.
And, you've got side one is only 15 minutes long, and side two's about the same. So probably for that reason, as you say, Gray, to get a better sonic quality on the record, but also charging more money for a double record.
As if they hadn't made enough money from all the 16 million versions of the singles before it came. I was like, God, it was ridiculous.
But then putting it as a double gave you the beautiful gatefold with the artwork.
The artwork was spectacular, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was something else.
Shall we talk about the music?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So there's two tracks on side one, or side F, as it is known. Pray, Frankie, Pray.
Frankie Parade.
The opening track is kind of a prelude, but it's called "The World Is My Oyster." It's just under 2 minutes long. Shall we do that separately, or do you want to do it with the title track?
Well, I think technically, here we go. Technically, already, it's actually 3 separate tracks. It's Well, which is about 50 seconds, and then you've got just the words "The world is my oyster," about 10 seconds, and then you've got "Snatch of Fury," which makes up the end bit, which is the kind of little instrumental segment that segues into Pleasuredome.
But if you didn't have that on a screen in front of you, you wouldn't know that, would you?
I'm not. Yeah, I didn't know the timings exactly. But yeah, and I think actually on the back of the record, I haven't got the vinyl with me. Is it just listed as "World Is My Oyster," or is it split out?
No, I'd have to look.
Yeah,
dig mine out. Mikey's just reaching for his now.
I've got mine here.
You got yours?
Because interestingly, "The World Is My Oyster" was one of the early demos way back, which is actually a kind of a scat song. So it's kind of weird that it's on there as the same title, when in fact it's just Holly Seats.
So on the vinyl it is listed as "Well, The World Is My Oyster," "Snatch of Fury," and then "Welcome." Yeah, so it is listed as the individual tracks.
I think we should do the whole thing as one, really, because the whole 15 minutes is kind of the opening to the record, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Go on, Darren, do your worst. What do you make of the title track? If you can sum it up.
Weirdly, the first time I heard this was sat in the back of my dad's car. It was before the album had come out, and they played it, and I remember hearing whoever was presenting at that time. It was quite late on at night as well, and saying this is the title track from the album, which hadn't been released but was on pre-order, and I pre-ordered it. I remember just sitting there thinking, I can't even explain what this is. It's like, because like I say, I wasn't into prog music or anything like that. And I remember thinking, how long does it go on for as well? Because like I was used to 3 or 4 minute tracks, you know. And the way it faded in and out and kind of repeated itself and had motifs running all the way through it. It was fantastic. I remember thinking to myself, wow, if this is a sign of what the album's going to be like, then I can't wait for it. And yeah, it's something else.
Okay.
I don't know if we're doing the many versions of it yet, or we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that later on. Yeah. Neil, what do you make of the side one of the double album?
I think when I was listening to it, you know, probably in my early teens and late teens, that it was the song that I loved the most. It was the piece that I loved the most. And it's weird actually when I got into prog a little bit later in my teens, the seeds were always there. I looked back and went, I loved that, and I loved Astrodyne on Vienna, and I loved Welcome to the Pleasuredome, and I even actually listened to kind of some fairly lightweight classical stuff when I was younger as well. So the roots of I love things that are long, twisted, complicated, shifting, were there like when I was 9 or 10, which is quite mental when you think about it. But that I latched onto that absolutely straight away. Is just, wow, this is a journey. It's self-indulgent, it's over the top, it's kitchen sink, and the production as well, the Trevor Horn production. I don't know that I'd ever heard anything that sounded as lush as that on an album.
Yeah.
And the sound of it just blew my mind.
Okay. Craig, what do you make of this?
I think it's quite funny because if you only are familiar with the single, so if you're some kind of 14-year-old teenage girl coming into this in 1984, you've heard Relax and things like Two Tribes and stuff. It opens up with like an operatic piece with percussion and things like that, and then you get into some kind of 14-minute prog epic with pop and dance sensibilities. It's I mean, the production, like the guys saying, I do find it funny because I'm saying some of the production on this album is beyond top notch, but you can see through all the money and everything at the singles. But I think the title track's great, and like I say, I've never really paid like much attention to this album because I always just felt that I thought the singles were brilliant, classic pop, but it's never something I've dug into before, and it's been interesting, shall we say? Good
Yeah,
fun.
it's got a bit of a reputation for people who aren't particularly fans of it, of being the singles and lots of
Yes,
things. But I
you
think
know,
it's more than that, if I'm honest.
yeah, it's funny because you know how a lot of times here, it's like all killer, no filler. Well, a lot of people have said about this album, it's half killer, half filler.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't quite believe that.
Okay. Gray, what do you make of side one?
I love it. So this is my the track "Welcome to the Pleasuredome" is my second favorite track on the album. For everything that Darren and Neil have said, that kind of the sprawling music, the prog sensibility. But by this time, so I was brought up on things like classical music. My dad loved jazzy stuff, Chicago, but he also loved War of the World. So the art rock type stuff with that kind of the long form piece and all that kind of. I was in love with that by that point. I'd already heard like this, the first few Marillion pieces. That kind of thing really drew me in. It was quite surprising because it took me a few years to get the album. Although I had all the singles, I didn't buy the album.
Yeah,
so I didn't really pay any attention to it. And then I bought the album, put it on side one, and I was like, oh, wow, this is actually, it's not just hype, it's actually good. And I think Trevor Horn, the production on it, the way it's been done is just fantastic. It really is. I've never heard it sound bad. even on my cheaper systems, it's never sounded bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Mikey, what do you make of it?
When I started buying music, I was 12-inch singles all the way. So a lot of the versions of songs that I heard were either on Top of the Pops or the 12-inch singles, which often ended up being remixes or extended versions. And to me, this is just an absolute epic 12-inch version. It's just got everything you could possibly want. It's got the song and it's got everything else going on either side of it. Absolutely fantastic. The world section at the beginning with the opera, it's just the last thing you expect to hear when you put the needle on the record. It is absolutely astounding, and a trick that Trevor Horn would pull off again with the Pet Shop Boys when he did Left to My Own Devices with them.
Yes.
You can tell, his little idiosyncrasies that he uses, and he does callbacks with a lot of artists. But this it's just all over the place, but it's seamless and it's beautiful. I mean, the song proper doesn't kick in till about 1:20. You've got a load of like tropical bird song going on, and then this bass and guitar driven melody comes in. It is just absolutely stonking, and Holly's vocals throughout the entire song are biting and driven. Absolutely amazing stuff. But I love the fact that it's got probably about maybe 4 or 5 sections to it. At about 5 minutes, it turns into this funk-driven track. At about 6.5 minutes, you've got this extended instrumental interlude, which is just loads of effects and overdubs and some wonderful acoustic guitar from the amazing Steve Howe.
Yeah.
Then at 9 minutes 50, you've got female backing singers coming in for the first time and delivering part of the song. And for the last minute, it then does a 360 and goes back to the full hoo-has and all the rest of it. It's just outstanding. It's amazing that they filled one side of vinyl with essentially one piece of music. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've all said. I mean, this track is probably why the album has the reputation that it has, because it peaks so early.
Yeah, as an opener. Yeah.
It is my favorite track on this record. It always has been the title track. I mean, you've been to Sam, haven't you, Darren? And you sort of seen
Yeah.
Trevor do talks on this album, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah.
How much of it is the band, and how much of it is Trevor and
I was going to come into that. Yeah. So what's interesting? So this box set that dropped a few months back. That's the first time that a demo of Welcome to the Pleasuredome has been released that was pre-ZTT. And it's interesting to hear that structure was already there. They had that song. Now, obviously, Trevor came and polished it. On the album itself, there are only Paul and Holly credited out of the band. Everything else is Steve Lipson, JJ, Andy Richards, and Trevor.
Yeah.
And Dudley gets credited for Two Tribes and other bits. But the core of it was them. And one of the reasons, apparently, wasn't because they couldn't play, but it was Trevor's insistence that they worked to, because they were using the Fairlight and they were using the synclavier, everything was synchronized.
Yeah.
And the band couldn't play to the sync.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So that's why it was all done by them. So there's been a maybe unfairly kind of saying, oh, the band couldn't actually play anything at all, and it was all Trevor Horn, and it was basically Trevor Horn and Yes, and other members playing all the stuff. But yeah, when you actually go back to those pre-May '83 demos, you can see that they did have the chops. Holly was a bassist in Big in Japan, which had Ian Brody in it and Bill Drummond. That was a decent band. He could play as well as sing. I think Nash was in a band called Sons of Egypt, I think, playing guitar. There was the thing that Trevor always says, that when he signed them, it was actually Nash's cousin Jed who played guitar, and he left when they got signed to ZTT. And when they turned up, Trevor's like, "Where's that guy that can play guitar?" Because he's like, "Oh, he's gone, he's left." So they had to get they got Nash in, who was his cousin. But yeah, I think it's a bit unfair, but it did turn them from quite a raw punky band into something quite special, though, because that production is
the
they wouldn't have made it without that. Yeah.
The fact that it is so metronomic is what drives the title track through and holds your attention. It's so on the money.
Yeah.
And the bass track throughout just carries you right throughout the almost 14 minutes of the song, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think Steve Lipson talked about it, because I think it was originally just a 3 or 4 minute track, and then he kept looping it, and he got 2 tape machines, and he offset them by 8 bars and started looping them. And Trevor had never seen anybody do that before, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, basically, if we just play the same thing, like a copy of it, over the top of itself, but offset by 8 bars, it will just keep going." And basically, that's what he did. And it's quite ingenious. Also, it makes me laugh that it was used on Brave from Marillion 10 years later, where they were sampling things like people throwing coins in the street. So the sound of the bottles clinking and things like that in Welcome to the Pleasuredome was actually, they were recording after Notting Hill Carnival, which is where Sarn West is. And while the sweepers were out cleaning the streets and doing everything from the night before, Trevor hung a recorder out the window and basically sampled the sounds of the street cleaners cleaning up the streets. And that's what all that kind of random bottle noises are and things like that.
It's an incredible piece of music, and even things just like that snap on the snare drum just makes the track.
So the quality of the recording is really quite unbelievable. I watched a video with Trevor Horn in the studio with some of the original tracks. I don't know if it was about him, if it was about Psalm or something. And he was talking, and he played one of the Frankie tracks. I'm not sure if it was this or if it was Two Tribes, and he played it all, and everything was set at 0 on the desk. There was no level set, but everything sounded exactly as it would on the record. And they're like, "So how much mixing did you do?" He went, "No, I recorded it the way I wanted it to sound." He says, "That's it." that is the and it was just like mind blowing. Well, looking at how he'd done it and what they played and how they'd recorded it, the quality of what they did is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, that's side one, all 15 minutes of it. Side two, or side G, say Frankie say, starts with Relax. I mean, what can we say about Relax? Well, I shall ask you. Darren, what can you say about Relax?
Okay. So yeah, this was my introduction to Frankie. And I think it was because it infamously got banned. It, the hype around it, like Gray was saying before, you kind of got sucked into all that thing. I mean, I was, it was unheard of at the time that, what was a main play record at the time was getting a lot of airplay, suddenly gets pulled off air, refused to play, and then you're into, well, why did that happen? I mean, the marketing genius that Paul Morley is to actually pull that off. I mean, he always argued that one of two things would happen: it would go stratospheric, or it would get banned, and he didn't care either way because he knew what would happen, whichever way it went. But yeah, I don't like it as much as the album versions of all the tracks. I don't quite like as much as the stuff that got released. So the single version of Relax isn't much different. But yeah, I think the album version, which I think is Tag Come Dancing, I think.
Come Fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that one, the single version was called Move, I think, the original version. But yeah, I mean, it's a great track. Still, it's like, it's the sound of the 80s. It's on every single 80s compilation. And if you were, I don't think there can't be anybody in the world that's not heard it. It's it just became that ubiquitous sound of the 80s. And again, I mean, I'll talk about what Trevor said when I went to saw him about Relax, because it's quite interesting. But yeah.
Okay. Neil, Relax.
Yeah, again, I was 10. I remember the song. I remember liking the song. I have a memory, and sometimes when you have a memory, you're not sure whether you actually pieced it together later, but I have a memory of saying to my mother that I didn't understand what the problem with it was. And my mother was like, I should bloody well hope not. But yeah, the fact that it was banned and it was, everybody in school was talking about it and all the rest of it. But there's a wee twist in this for me, because I know you can tell from my accent, but I'm actually a Scouser. And when I was growing up in a small town in southern Scotland, that got me quite a lot of grief. So and don't get me wrong, if they weren't bullying me for being English, they'd have bullied me for being a geek or having a smart mouth, both of which were true. And all of a sudden there was this thing that was from Liverpool. It was from my hometown, and everybody loved it. And I really latched onto that and went, oh, you like Frankie Goes to Hollywoods? Well, they're from Liverpool. They're from where I'm from. So I sort of took a slightly perverse pride from this thing from Liverpool that everybody in my school loved and everybody was going nuts about, and I could sort of associate with it on that basis.
Okay. Greg?
Well, I mean, Darren covered it perfectly. It's possibly one of the most iconic tunes of the 1980s, and it over the last like 42 years, you've never been able to escape this song, and it's brilliant, and it's iconic for a reason. And yeah, I do remember the controversy and everything at the time, and I do remember seeing the video on one of the Channel 4 shows, late night kind of things. So we as soon as something's banned, especially when you're like just before a teenager or something like that, you want to know you want to know what's going on, don't you? Because you want to be a rebel, you want to fight it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a classic and will remain a classic indefinitely.
Okay, great.
Can I just ask that none of us mention it was 42 years ago again, please? Like, what? it was the song of that summer. It was just, you know, like I say, it was nothing like the stuff that I liked, but I was absolutely blown away with it, wrapped up in it, took it. Everyone was talking about Relax. Everybody was talking about Frankie. It was just one of those things that if you didn't like it, you were the odd one out. If you didn't talk about it, you had nothing to say to anybody. It was just ridiculous. Is it a good song, as in a song structure and all that?
No.
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 Is it a perfect pop song because of the way it's driven, because of the way it's got the hooks, because of all that stuff? Of course it is. It was written to sell music, to sell the single, and it did exactly what it did. But if you've read Trevor Horn's book, and I don't know what you're going to say, Darren, about what he said when you saw him at Tom or what have you, but by the time they got to the Xth remix and right, how do we sell another 100,000 and how do we this? He was just like, had enough of this. Just stop it, please, because it became too much. But it's just, it is the song of the 80s. It's, you know, there's probably, you're probably lucky to name a handful that do the same, have the same kind of effect when you put it on.
Yeah, I mean, it predates the album by nearly a year.
Yeah.
Okay, Mikey, what do you make of it?
Well, it's just fucking awesome, isn't it? Production off the charts, as you would expect with something that, I mean, it was the first thing that Trevor worked on for the album, really, wasn't it? Because it was like being handled as a single, see how it went. And, you know, I think it wasn't until it went stratospheric that they said, you know, we best start working on a, you know, on song number 2, because, you know, we're gonna need one. I love high energy music, which this has got in spades as well. That, you know, the actual song High Energy, which has got that backing that goes ding 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 ding. It's the same as this. You know, and they were both released the same year. So it's that chicken and egg situation, who bothered it off who, or it could be just complete coincidence. But I agree with Darren. When you listen to the album, I get disappointed hearing the mixes that were used on the album.
Yeah.
You know, that's my only gripe. I mean, I can make a better album, which would be probably 3 times longer than what this one is, just with my favorite mixes. I mean, there's a version of this song which is called Greatest Bits Mix, which runs for about 17 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's fucking awesome. It's got the best bits from all of the Sex mixes and the New York mixes, all just rearranged and put out. I mean, at a very minimum, I think the New York mix is probably my favorite, or the Louis Jordan mix, perhaps.
Yeah.
Both of which run at about 7 minutes. And I think it was a missed opportunity. But the business head of me on now is saying, I've sold millions of copies of the singles. I don't need to have that on the album. I kind of understand why. But when you've got such iconic songs and they were struggling for content, if it had been me, I would have had side 2 like side 1. You know, Relax would have been the epic B-side to Pleasuredome. That's where I would have gone.
They kind of, for want of a better phrase, toss off these 3 tracks on side 2 with short versions. I know that's not a technical phrase, boys, but yeah.
It's a good point, though.
I'm with you, Mikey. You know, when you're used to, I mean, I had the Sex mix. I didn't get lots of mixes of Relax, but I was used to the Sex mix. And this side is quite disappointing, you know, when you think about the really good 12-inch mixes that are out there for these songs.
Yeah.
I mean, Relax is still a fantastic record. But there are far more interesting things on the other. I'm just checking what's on side. No, maybe not side 3. On 3 of the 3 of the other sides of the record than this. But yeah, track 4 is War. You have
In
to do that
brackets,
every time we say it now. Darren.
I was just going to say about relax.
Sorry.
And I think it was Gray mentioned earlier about the bit with Trevor in the studio where basically what was mixed was the thing. And what happened with Relax is they'd gone through so many versions of it and they'd almost nailed it. And then Trevor he got so fed up with it, told Steve Lipson to erase it completely. They had a third version of it, and he basically told him to erase it. Anyway, he'd gone home, and Steve Lipson started playing around with it, and him and Andy Richards were in the studio, and Steve Lipson started playing a bit of guitar over it, and Andy Richards came up with some chords on the keyboards, and Trevor came back in, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, that's what's been missing. So they sat down and they started recording it there and then. And about 11 o'clock at night, this is how he told it at Sam. He said about 11 o'clock at night, Holly and Paul came to the studio and they rang the bell downstairs and Trevor went down to see him and he's like, "We've changed it again." And Holly was like, "How much have you changed it?" And Trevor's like, "We've changed it a lot." And he's like, "Okay." So they go back upstairs, they play the mix over the monitors, and Holly apparently starts dancing around in Studio One with the new mix playing, and then started singing over the top of it. And Trevor and Steve and JJ were in the control room. And as it all was unfolding, it finished. And apparently Trevor turned around to Steve and says, "I hope you fucking press record then." And that version is pretty much the version that they put out.
Right.
It's almost live.
Yeah.
I was like, that is impressive. Because they did, and he's like, "We've nailed it." And apparently he went home and told his missus Jill, and he's like, "I think we got it last night, eventually, after about 8 months."
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting because he is quite open about the fact he struggled for ages to get something he was happy with, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, he's I've recently heard that he's quite a difficult guy to work with just because of his standards, really. I mean,
From a certain Dave Megan, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Okay, moving on then. War.
Whew.
Darren.
So when I was listening to it again the other day in prep, I was listening to the new mix, and I thought, wow. And I hadn't realised at the time, and it's only in retrospect, but Louis Jardim is all over that song. All the percussion is mental.
Oh yeah.
It's like, wow. And then as I was listening to it, I'm thinking, actually, he's playing percussion on all these tracks, but War especially, like all the, it's like, but I'd never heard this song before, and I didn't even realise it was a cover.
All right.
And I don't think it obviously fitted in the mold. I don't know where exactly it came from. I don't think it was one that they'd previously tried as a band before they joined ZTT. But I guess because it ended up on the B side or double A side of Two Tribes.
Yeah.
I guess whoever decided, that War would be a good cover song to do because it fit with the Two Tribes thing. Probably a Paul Morley or a Trevor idea.
But it was a B side to begin with, wasn't it? And then the next version, it was a double A side because it was originally
double A with.
Yeah.
Because it was. And didn't they have this? Did they do the sleeve the other way around on one of
Yes.
these? So War was the front
yeah.
cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great song. I still prefer it to any other version, to be honest. Even though it is a cover. But...
Okay, Neil.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a cover either. I'd not heard the original version at all. I think with this one, so somebody mentioned War of the Worlds earlier as well. For when you started getting this and you've got like Chris Barry doing his Ronald Reagan impression and all that stuff, and this is when I started going, this is a narrative, right? And it it's joining it together. There's flow, there's theme, and yet Darren, you mentioned the percussion. For me, this is a percussion track with some other people playing on it. I mean, it's just immense, the percussion on it. And, finding out that it was Louis Jordan that played on it did not shock me at all. It was like, it's that good. But yeah, it's always the narration I remember on this more than the actual song, to be honest.
Yeah. Greg?
I think it's a really clever cover version, and obviously, like the guys have already said, our favourite friend, Monsieur Don Le Jardin, is absolutely all over it. And I like the intercuts with the Reagan stuff as well, and the whole thing fits, like I say, as a counterpiece to Two Tribes later on. And there's a bit of level 42-esque slap bass in, which sounds a bit like the start of Seinfeld. Yeah, and I think it's a really clever cover version.
Yeah, Ray?
I love it, and I think for me, the reason I like this so much, so I knew it was a cover version because my mum was into soul music and this kind of stuff. But for me, it was the first time I'd heard an old song taken and given new life. And boy, was it given life. It's just utterly amazing. And I think, Darren, you're probably right. I think of all the versions of the song, from the traditional to the original to ones that have come since, it's probably my favorite version of the song War. It's powerful, it's driven. Yeah, it's just, there's not a lot more to add than the guys have already said, to be honest.
Okay. I'm going to ask Mikey to try and add something to it.
Oh, I'm sure he will.
Yeah. It's, again, I actually got sorry, I'm going to get my teeth in. When Two Tribes came out, I got the first 12-inch single. So that was my first Frankie record. So I knew War from that, but it was the War in brackets Hide Yourself version, which is pretty much a straightforward cover of the song. So when you get to hear it on the album version, which is War in brackets and Hide, the and Hide bit is 4 minutes of percussion and bass, and it's bonkers. And, like Darren said, Chris Barry doing his Reagan impression, absolutely top-notch stuff. I mean, who thought Arnold Rimmer could pull off impressions? It's but it wasn't until many years later I found out that he used to do a lot of work on Spitting Image and stuff. Well before Red Dwarf, and I was a massive Red Dwarf fan, and I didn't even know that. So it's amazing, how much your collective memory. It's like a game of Kaplunk, isn't it? You go, oh yeah, I know that guy from there. And I mean, for a lot of years, I assumed that all of the voices on this album were just snippets from news or whatever. I didn't realize that somebody was sat in the studio reading shit out and pretending to be these characters.
I want to hear that Prince Charles interview.
It's 11-year-old. I was quite naive, but I think this version works better than the War B-side. I think because it breaks up Relax and before you get into Two Tribes, it's like a prelude, and when War Surrender was released on the third 12-inch single, it was going off in a different tangent altogether. And again, a lot of this album, I feel, gets the mixes wrong. But in this case, I think they got it right. I think there's just enough of War to get away with it without it sounding too trite. I think the B-side verges on, but one of the better versions of War that is out there, I think.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. When I was saying I think I preferred all the non-album versions, I think you might be right about War. I think that this version is actually one of the stronger ones.
Yeah.
I think with the Chris Barry and Reagan stuff, it was all tied in with the Two Tribes video as well, wasn't it? It was all of this was about getting more media coverage and more headlines and shocking people. I think that was, again, that's what they were out to do. I think, as you said, Mike, this is quite a good mix. It includes a huge breakdown very early on in the track, doesn't it? And then builds back up to the Chris Barry stuff. I I did know it was a cover. It's, you know, the original's a brilliant track.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of the song here, if I'm honest, and certainly not on this version. But yeah, it leads us nicely into Two Tribes, Darren.
This for the victims of ravishment, isn't it? This version.
Yeah.
Which again, I mean, it's Two Tribes, but the single and the many 12 inches had already been out before the album, and in that context, you kind of go, it's a bit meh, really, compared to the other ones. I mean, after Annihilation and Carnage, you kind of go, they could have done a bit more with it. Even the single version, which opens with the air attack warning, sounds like.
Yeah.
I mean, all that superfluous stuff that's on the singles that make it what it is all missing off this. It's kind of just a straight song, and you kind of think there's better versions of it.
Yeah.
But I think what actually works and why it's done like this is the Relax into Two Tribes actually flow pretty seamlessly, and the single versions would have sounded like individual tracks rather than a vague suite of music. Like War goes into Two Tribes pretty seamlessly. Yeah. But if you'd have then had that hard cut and got into the air attack warning sounds like, you'd have gone, oh yeah, it's the single version. Whereas this way it does kind of flow a bit better. The track itself, wow, stunning. I mean, I prefer it to Relax. I prefer Two Tribes by a long way. Yeah. And I remember staying up till 12 o'clock to watch the video being released on the Tube or whatever this time it was, and watching that thinking, I've not even seen it. I mean, it was all spitting image, wasn't it? And then at that point, I also hadn't realised Chris Barry was doing the voices and things like that.
Well, he was the go-to guy at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the main guys in spitting image, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Neil, Two Tribes.
Yeah, I think Darren, you said it early on about this being, you know, beautifully structured over the 4 sides, and you know, for me this is 4 EPs. It's not 1 LP, and this is EP 2, and you know we had all the singles were out. We'd heard all the singles, and for me this is the summary. This is you know these songs. Here's what they're like, and here's a mega mix that brings them together and adds the narration and adds the coherence to them, because on their own they don't massively work. But Two Tribes for me, the song, always loved it more than Relax. Yeah. And I remember the hype around the video. You know, have you seen the video? Have you seen the video? You actually saw the video. You're like, really? Is that it? You know, I think after Relax being banned, and you know, probably at that time still didn't really understand why it had been banned, but there was this sense that it was deeply shocking and deeply inappropriate. And you actually saw the video, and it's like, you know, okay, it's 2 people in costume throwing dust at each other in a wrestling ring. It's not that big a deal. Yeah. But yeah, the versions of this, I've gone nuts on versions of this. I don't know how many versions I've got. Probably about half as many as Darren, I suspect. But I always go back to Hibakusha.
Yeah, Hibakusha is my favourite mix of that. Yeah.
It's just, you know, and is that the one that's got the, ladies and gentlemen, the best thing since the world goes to Hollywood, and then you get
no, that's Annihilation.
That's the Annihilation mix.
Yeah. There you go. See, I'm even getting the versions mixed up.
Yeah.
But I sometimes wonder whether I've ever heard the same version of Two Tribes twice. It's just so
Annihilation was the first 12-inch.
Yeah.
Then Carnage was the second one, which had the war flip side on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of the singles, I would say it was my favourite. And it's the one that I remember latching on to more at the time, more than Relax. I think with Relax it was, oh, that's a pop song. Oh, apparently it's been banned. Oh, that's interesting and exciting. Yeah. Whereas with Two Tribes, I think it was right. This is actually a really great song, and I understood it, I think, you know, for the most part. But yeah, it's the best of the singles for me.
Okay, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, again, another iconic tune, another iconic video. I mean, I think the controversy around the video because it was quite anti-establishment at the time. You didn't quite the likes of Spit and Image and stuff like you didn't poke as much fun as world leaders in the presses and in modern culture, media culture, as much as they do now. So it was a bit like, oh, you're doing what? And if you growing up in that time. I mean, 1983, harken back to something like 1963. 1983 was one of the closest times we'd ever came to a nuclear conflict between the East and the West. So, it was very, very topical, very on point, and an iconic pop tune about it. And I think, I think like the guys, I do prefer Two Tribes over Relax, but that's just a personal taste thing.
Okay, great.
I totally agree. It's the highlight of this EP, if you want to use Neil's way of putting it. So for me, this side of music, it peaks at the end as it should. Was it Lee Fuller that posted on your page about and he posted the producer's version of this, where they were doing that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because you see it, and Trevor Horn's playing the bass line. He went, did he go down here or did he not? And the guy went, he says, and he sang on, and he started, I don't know if it was Steve Lutzen, whoever it was, started playing the guitar part. And it's within seconds, you hear that guitar part, then the bass comes in, and you're just like, oh yeah, taken right. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
But it's so simple. It's not, there's no real complex movement. It's not really sort of difficult chords and structure and stuff, but it is so good at what it does.
Yeah.
And the song's really, really powerful because of that, because it's that repetitive rhythm and groove that drags you along with it. I get what Neil was saying about the video. The video for me is part of what draws me in to this. I remember it because I was allowed to see this video because it wasn't the one that was banned. It wasn't the bit, do you know what I mean? It was like, but like Craig says, at that time, to see Reagan and Chernyenko fighting each other in a ring, it was really kind of, because apart from Spitting Image, everybody was really deferent to politicians at that time. It was still a case of they were like that separate from the way we lived and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have 24-hour awareness of everything that they were doing wrong and all that kind of stuff. And
one thing I'll just interject though, Gray, you can actually tell the difference just mentioning Spitting Image. Just if you remember the furore when Spitting Image announced that they were actually going to have a puppet of the Queen Mother.
Yes,
that was headline news. It was,
yeah.
And now something like that you wouldn't even bat an eyelid of, but compared to what the establishment was back 40 years
ago. And then look at the re-release of Spitting Image. I was like, really? It was awful. When they tried to bring it.
It was just not of its time anymore. That's
exactly.
It was completely out of time when it came.
But yeah, I mean, I just this song for me is the peak of this side. It's just perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Mikey?
It's probably one of my favorite songs of all time. And I can listen to any of the mixes that were put out and think, this is my favorite mix now. And then, I'll go back and put Carnage on again, and I'll go, oh yeah, this is my favorite mix now. And I love the 12-inch version. It's got the still from the video on it. Very, very brave of them to do that, with Reagan having been hoofed in his knackers. That being said, the album version's a bit of a disappointment. It works in the flow.
Yeah.
But there is better out there. There is far better out there. And again, like we've mentioned before, in hindsight, they've sold amounts of copies, probably 1.5 million copies of Two Tribes, I think, at its end of its cycle. So what was the point in putting one of these versions on the album? I'd have had an entire side with Keep the Peace version, which is also known as Madison Square, which has got the best bits from Annihilation and Carnage in there.
We're going to have 8 slabs of vinyl with special editions.
Again, I'm sorry to say, Mikey's got form for this. Quite frequently, we discuss an album and he wants 4 extra discs on CD or 4 extra vinyls. So this is not new.
It isn't really, but like my first 3 sides of this double album would have just been Pleasuredome, Relax, Two Tribes.
But they don't. I mean, to be fair to them, they love to rip us off, but they didn't want to tell us the same thing again. So
Yeah.
this is different.
Yeah.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
But you know, this is back in the days before we could create playlists and that sort of thing. You know,
true.
now we can just dip in and out of music. You know, if I wanted to hear the versions of the songs that I preferred from Frankie, I had to pull out 5 records. You know,
Oh dear.
but
What a
I still
shame.
do.
Oh, nightmare.
And I still do. But the thing that bugs me the most
Just
is
waved
the
about 4 of them at us on this podcast.
It's the middle 8 section that's missing, which I think is one of the highlights of the song for me. It's like to tell the world that you're living. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Yeah.
Love it. It just lifts the song out of the heaviness of it all, either
Yeah.
side, and it just takes it somewhere else, and then it brings you crashing back in. And I think that's what's missing from the album version. And I know they do it as a sort of like a coda with the next track tag.
Yeah.
But I think it's needed, and they should have just, if they were going to do it, just put the bloody single version on. You know, at the very least, put the single version on. Talking about the videos, a few years after this, we got our first satellite box in Washington, where we grew up, and there was a program on there called Music Box, or a channel called Music Box, sorry, and there was a documentary style thing on one evening, which was about Godley and Cream and the videos that they made, and they showed the Video Destructo version of Two Tribes, which I had never seen before, which was obviously a cut down version of the Hypercusher remix.
Yeah.
And it's a far better video. It's even more gritty and powerful, and it takes away some of the comedy of it and just, you know, pushes it a bit further. I'm not sure if it's probably on YouTube, but if you can get the Video Destructo version of the Two Tribes video, get it watched, because it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah. I haven't got much to add to all of that. I mean, my favourite mix is still the Hibakusha mix. It always will be. But it's quite a nice, concise sort of 13 minutes, side 2. Okay, well, we're going to interrupt the discussion there because it's quite a lengthy discussion. So we're going to leave that for this week and come back next week to hear. Next week too? When are we doing it?
Yeah, probably next week.
Come back next week to hear the rest of the conversation. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Neil McCrystal, Darren Moore, and the usual gang of Mikey, Gray, and Craig. Thank you to you for listening. We'll see you next week.
So it's good night from me. We'll do it the wrong way around.
Ooh, and it's good night from him.
Take care.
And stay alive.
Oh, the kids' knobs. Thanks for listening.
To Planet Music from the makers of Planet Marzipan.
If you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe, and maybe even join our Facebook discussion group.
You can contact us at planetmarzipanpodcast@gmail.com.